Damn, Daniel, back at it again with the white vans. Hey everybody, welcome to Sketch a Day. It's me, Spencer. I'm back, and I know it's been a minute, but I am back. And today I'm going to be doing just a simple analog sketch demo using pen and marker and this nifty airbrush tool. So if you want to follow along, just grab some marker paper, printer paper, whatever you have. As always, I'll post links to all the stuff I'm using. And if you want to support what I'm doing, you can make your purchase through those links. They are affiliate links, which means I get a little bit of a kickback. But in any case, let's get started. So what we're going to be drawing today is a hairdryer. And I did a little bit of homework before, looked up a hairdryer really quickly on Google Images. It's just what I typically do if I'm trying to design or sketch something that I've never drawn or sketched before. So I kind of have a rough idea in my head of what the general construction and proportion is and features of the product. So to start, let's kind of set up our perspective. And I've got my paper here. You can see it in the frame. And so I'm going to just draw a nice little center line there. And on this center line, I'm going to draw two lines like so. So this will become the front of my hairdryer, and this will become the back. And let's see, let's do another line like so, and this will kind of be my handle. So these will function as the construction lines for my entire drawing. Now the next step is to kind of rough out and establish my perspective. Okay, like so. And this will be really rough today, but in any case, I've got two kind of squares. The square at the back is a little bit bigger. Again, this is just based on what I saw and kind of my interpretation of the hairdryer product as it stands. So next, I'm going to draw an ellipse here, and so this will become the front of my hairdryer. And if I want, I could actually draw another section. So if I wanted to kind of get proportionally my design here, I could draw a couple more sections. Now the one I've drawn at the back, I've kind of taken a shortcut. Normally, if you want to draw a sphere, there's a way to do it where you draw a couple ellipses based on different planes and so forth, and then you're able to kind of construct the entire ellipse. But since this is just a rough sketch, I'm gonna just use that as a guide, and I can essentially loft all these shapes like so, just with a nice easy curve. And I've got the rough of the body of my hairdryer. Cool. So this is a really rough sketch. So because I am working with marker paper, what I can do is now, and we'll reuse that underlay marker paper in just a sec here. And I'm drawing really big, just to let you know. So, and always you want to warm up before you start drawing. Okay, so I just ghosted over the paper. I really needed to focus just there. But I wanted to draw a decent ellipse for you guys. Here's another ellipse. And because I have my underlay, I can basically just trace what I did before. Alright, so now I've got my body. And I had this line here on my underlay for the handle, but I really don't like the position of it. So what I'm going to do is come back to my underlay now, and I'm going to draw a couple sections. So I'm trying to imagine where the handle, and maybe I should draw this in red so you guys can see this a little bit better. So I'm switching to a red marker, and I'm going to draw one ellipse here and another ellipse here. Okay, so what I'm essentially doing is mapping where the transition of the handle, as I want it to be on this body, would be. Okay, and so the line that I'm pointing to right here, this is the line on the other side of the hairdryer as it's wrapping back, and I've also got another line here which is kind of the end of that transition. And I'm just gonna do a nice little curve between these two. Now this curve isn't visible, I'm just trying to map out where this intersection happens, right, on this shape. Now, my next step is, okay, I can draw sections for the handle as well. So if I want to start small, for example, and then curve back on itself, I can do that. Something like so, right? And you can always put more sections in, but I'm assuming that this is largely kind of a cylindrical section to the hairdryer here. And I'll just take my black marker. Now, normally you've got some button to kind of turn the hairdryer on and off. You've also got vent details. So I'm going to put some vents on the back. And to do that, I'm drawing a series of ellipses, like so. Okay, and this is really rough, but just in black, I'm going to use the ellipses I drew to kind of map out these vents. Okay, and that way I know my geometry is pretty accurate on the back here. Okay, because I'm essentially using sections of ellipses along the backside. And then for my button area, right, I'm gonna kind of follow the profile that I designed here on the handle and split this button, one for hot, one for cool, something like that. Ladies, if you know more about hair dryers than I do, my apologies, but doing my best here. Okay, and then we'll have, you know, kind of where the cord comes into the base and so on. All right, and for the inside, just another ellipse, and I'm gonna do some sort of, you know, vent detail on the inside. But that's essentially my rough sketch, and I can take this sketch, put it underneath, and now I can continue to pull out the details where it matters. So if you've watched my previous videos, I've talked about this idea of form, divide, beautify as kind of a three-step process to sketching a product. Well, sometimes it's not an entirely linear process. You can actually jump between steps. So where I figured out the form, I can then jump to dividing that form, and then back to beautifying. And if I forgot something, I can divide it again, and so forth. So just like design, sketching is kind of an organic process, right? Okay, and that line's gonna go away, so I'm not worried about it. On the back here, like I said, I can use these lines I sketched in, and I'm not tracing, I'm redrawing. Okay, so these won't be perfect, but I can use what I did previously as a guide. A little heavier line weight here on the top of these, because this is where, if I were to draw kind of a cross section, right, of this vent area, I would have an edge and light passing that edge, and where light passes the edge of an object, that's where we have a line. In this case, I want the line weight to be just a little bit heavier on that edge, because that's going to read more like kind of a part break or feature functional break on this product. All right, and just you know, keeping it loose, keeping it light, shading in with my black pen there. We also have this vent or fins that I sketched on the front, so I'll just slightly sketch that in there, like so. And always remember, when in doubt, rough it out. So if you're not sure of something, it's okay to go back to your underlay, figure it out, and come back to your main drawing, right? Totally fine. Okay. I've been sketching power tools lately, so I'm really tempted to put some grips on this thing, but I'm not going to do that today. All right. And let's get our area where the cable connects. And if you're joining me for the first time, I'm Spencer. I run Sketchaday on Instagram primarily these days, and I just do a drawing every day. And when I can, I like to share what I know on YouTube. So welcome if this is your first time. And just a reminder, if you want to support me, you can always do that by getting your materials for the links, or I don't know, just send me lots of money. Okay, so I'm gonna make this ellipse a part break here, and maybe it's not so much a color break as it is a finish break on this part. And in case you're wondering as well what size paper I'm using I think it's 14 by 17 or 17 by 24, something like that. Basically really big paper. And it's actually a trick. If you want to sketch better, it's always a good idea to sketch bigger. It's kind of like, for those of you who sketch digitally, if you zoom in enough on a drawing, you can sketch something in. It looks better when you zoom back out. Or you can take your sketch itself and shrink it by a little bit, and that'll give you kind of a higher degree of fidelity for your sketch. And I'll just preemptively kind of map out some sort of background element here that I want to have, and there'd be a shadow. Okay, and maybe I'll have some sort of indication of you know, this is the airflow, right? Okay, so now we have this body that's cylindrical, and whenever you're shading kind of an organic or curvilinear object, it's always a good idea, if you can, take a look at some reference. Okay, that's going to be your best bet. So try and find something that resembles the shape. But essentially, let's map this out on another piece of paper. Or actually, we can map it out here on this piece. And I just have red, so I'll use red again. And I'm going to have, you know, assuming I have one light source with some secondary source that's, you know, like reflected light or ambient light, kind of like this camera setup even, where you've got a primary and secondary light source. My primary light source is going to be responsible for a pretty big highlight on the top of this thing. Now, I want this hairdryer to seem glossy, so actually what's going to happen is I'm going to have lots of kind of artifacts, right? And compression of things in the environment. So what I'm shading in here, if you've ever looked at chrome pipes or you know, gone to the bathroom or looked at something shiny, you'll notice that your reflection is kind of compressed. So if I take something straight like this, and let's say it's a mirror, it's going to reflect kind of what's out here, right? If that mirror is now curved, okay, it's going to take those things, like say it's mountains or whatever, and it's going to all of a sudden compress those things, right? And you're going to get reflected light here. And moving up, if you're in an environment that's not open to the sky, you're going to get things like maybe the lights in the room and so on. And so with practice, you can kind of start to approximate what those things look like. So that being said, that is a theory at a glance. There is a more technical way to look at it, but hopefully this helps. It's like taking this flat surface, bending it, which is going to compress those reflections and pick up more reflected light below, and it's going to pick up things kind of above and show you those things in the reflection. So what I'm going to do now, I'll save this paper, and let's take, I've actually got some scrap paper over here. What I'm going to do, I was actually testing my air sprayer here earlier. I'm actually going to trace this. And I can do this in, you know, kind of a methodical way, but my goal is to create a mask for my spray paint. So I am just tracing this and giving myself some sort of guideline that I can cut out. So now I have this outline. I'm going to close this up for now, and on the back of my drawing pad here, I'm going to take this X-Acto knife. It's just a little craft knife, and I can come in and cut this out. And so when I cut this out, what I'm going to have is a negative shape that I can use to protect the rest of my drawing. And I'll just cut it there for now. And let's do a little test, and you can see it's starting to separate a little bit. And we'll, missed a spot there. So you kind of have to be careful. Sometimes these knives like to kind of go on their own path and wander. So with a little bit of concentration, you want to keep that as close to your outline as you can. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because we'll add an outline to the entire drawing, but this is just to kind of protect the rest of your paper as you go. Boom. Okay. All right. So pull this out. Got ourselves a little hairdryer here. We put that to the side, and let's flip our pad back over. And this is really how it was done back in the day, but it's a useful thing to practice and get used to, because you're not always going to have digital tools to help you, right? Okay. So I'm going to make the front section here kind of a matte black, and I'll do a glossy black on the rest of the body. So just to keep things kind of in place, I've got this magic tape, and I'm just going to tape this down in a few places. Now, I don't want the tape to be too sticky, so if you actually take the tape and just put it on your clothes, it'll pick up a little bit of the lint, pro tip. And that way, when I go to, so I flip this over, and I just want to tape down a few key areas so that when the air hits it from the spray tool, it doesn't, go all over. There's this stuff called Frisket you can also use to mask your spray paint or spray marker, if you will, for your drawings. I've seen this friend of mine, Joey Zeladon. He's a designer. He uses Post-it notes, a lot of Post-it notes around the edge of his drawings, and that actually can be used as a mask as well. But the point is just to get a good amount of contact where you feel like this paper might kind of lift up and cause issues, right? So maybe one or two more spots here, and I'll be in a good place. And just like that. So you can do this in one of two ways. Once you, let's place our mask here. So just kind of locate it, and when you feel like you're, roughly in the right spot, again, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, or at least for me, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you want to take the time to make it absolutely perfect, that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. But again, I'm just trying to protect essentially the rest of my drawing here so that I don't have a big mess on my hands. But we'll add a nice outline and a bunch of stuff here. All right. And even when you're spraying, if you want, you can, take the mask, move it, that kind of thing. But this will just give me a nice kind of protective layer, if you will. Now, you can either start with your artifacts and compressed reflections, or you can start with a marker. I'm going to start with my artifacts and compressed reflections. So I just have here a Copic marker, and for the black area, like I said, I'm not too worried about it, but I will. I'm going to plan on this being matte. So I'll need to grab like a 90% gray. I think I neglected to grab that, so I'll have to grab that in a sec. But I'll use like this black marker to kind of map out where my artifacts and compressed reflections would be. So just somewhere along the middle here, right? I'm gonna do something like this, and you kind of just want to imagine stuff in the environment, which I know sounds very vague, but maybe there's something here that got compressed and so forth, that you can include. And we'll just want to hit this a couple times like so. And then the rest of this right here is going to be, I guess I could use this one. This is actually, it's a good color. The rest of that there is going to be kind of a gradient or gradated, so not too worried about that. You can get that when the time's right. And this is a blue violet 29, and I kind of like it because it's giving it kind of this cool look as we're wrapping down here. And then on the top, if there are things in the environment up top, they may kind of reflect into this. For the matte, I'm just going to do a standard shade here, and I'm just going to use this one marker for now to get that. And so to get the matte, just consistent marker strokes like so. By consistent, I mean I'm trying not to overlap too much, and create kind of a consistent look. Now right where this surface is wrapping back, you're going to get some highlight being picked up, so I'm just trying to remind myself of that more than anything. And then just create a gradient by hitting those areas again. Like so. And because it's matte, you're going to get more of a consistent blend. Okay. Like so. Alright, so for the main body now, what I'm going to do is take my air marker, and I'm going to stick with this blue violet for now. And this is what I was talking about, where at the top, and you can test it, here on the side. Make sure that it's working before you really commit. Again, this is on my waste paper, so my drawing is actually fine. And on the top here, just create a gradient down the body. Alright, make sure we got some good airflow there. Oh, I'm going to remove the other end of the marker. And just kind of work it as you go. I'm getting a little bit dry, so I'm going to give the marker a chance to recover a little bit. So I'll switch to the black for just a sec. And the black's just going to deepen kind of that area I was talking about right here. So the black's just going to make that a little bit richer, deeper as we create our gradient here. But I kind of want to make sure I don't totally lose the blue. And on the bottom, just want to do the same thing, just have a nice kind of gradient coming down. Okay. Oh, lost our can there. All right. So let's cap this for now. And on the handle, I'm going to have, you know, kind of the same thing happening. Some sort of artifacting, if you will. You know, things like this, and just try to imagine, hey, if I were in a room, what are some of those things that might be in the room? Okay. And then kind of map those out, and then from there, where you have those high contrast areas, you can then take the airbrush and do a little bit of blending. Just like that. All right, let's cap this guy. Looks like I got some air marker on my hands as well. So again, this is why the mask is valuable, because it'll protect your drawing if you're careful. Looks like I had a few areas here where I didn't protect it, but that's okay. We'll make it work. All right, so there is kind of the rough shading, if you will, for this, and I'm just gonna take my black marker. Like I said, I can come back in and just on the outside, if I want, kind of fix a few things. So I'm just taking this black marker here, I'm just helping out the outline of my sketch. And the cool thing about the air marker is it actually gives you a little bit of a cool texture on your drawing. So I just kind of like the look and feel of it, if you will. It just helps it feel more organic. Okay, so next we have these little fins on the inside, and these are black, but I'm using my blue violet here. I just hit those just enough, but leave a couple areas where you might be receiving some light on those fins, and then in between where we have the gaps, I'll go ahead and shade those darker. And that's where the air would be coming out, right? Alright, just a little bit of touch up on the handle here. Something like that. Again, it depends on, you know, kind of the scene and what's happening. How much, you know, artifacting you're going to have, and so forth. And I kind of want to make this area a little bit whiter. Alright, so I want to make a couple areas on this sketch pop. So I've got some watercolor here, some gouache, and a little brush, and just gonna put a little bit on, you know, edges that might receive a little bit of light and create a few hot spots, and that's just going to help things like part lines read better. And you know, even in this area here where you know you've kind of got this gradient wrapping down, I may have a few hot spots I want to include. So if you're using you know, some sort of digital media, it's a little bit easier to do this. Working with opaque media in analog can be tricky, but just a nice detail brush. So like these edges on the right side of the drawing that I was telling you about, right? I can make those pop again just with a couple hits of my brush here. Just like so. Okay, and even this one on the top. This one's going to pop really well because you know you've got a lot of darks right next to the light. So if you are going to be doing this, lots of practice, trial and error, you'll kind of get a feel for it and know what works for you, right? So even this little area here in the front, just going to improvise because I want to make this kind of pop, be a little bit lighter. Just a little bit of paint there, kind of help that pop, because that's going to pick up some nice diffused light and kind of show the surface curvature, if you will. And then just on the very top edge here, to make this pop, go ahead. I'm trying to be careful not to let my palm touch the page because I don't want to create any smudges there. Okay. And this is a big drawing, like I said, so the cool thing is when you draw big, you can always scan, scale it down, take a picture, whatever you got to do. And if you shrink it just a little bit, it'll make it seem that much tighter. Okay. Alright, and I know this seems gross, but it is non-toxic paint, so I'm going to remove the excess. And because I don't have any water nearby, just lick it. You know, it's not going to kill you. And I do have a sip of water. And then you're fine. So if you're on the go, don't have a lot of time or whatever to... Oh, messed up my can there. If you don't have a lot of time to, you know, pull out all your equipment and get everything done, that's a quick way to use gouache and not you know, have to have the full setup. Man, I was gonna use this red marker, but I guess it's dead. So sometimes dead markers are kind of cool though, right? If you're gonna throw in some kind of background, but I will bolster this with the other red marker that I have, like so. Get a nice shadow in, and then I can come in and shade down the page and on top. Like so as well. So now you can kind of see, hey, those mistakes that we made aren't factoring in as much. If you want, you could even play with bringing some of the red into, you know, kind of the marker sketch itself. And as always, if this is, you know, if this is a, man, gotta hold it together today. If this is a product concept, you might want to consider things like having some sort of labels in if there's, you know, functional area or materials or so on. And this is just dummy text, right? But you can still see how having the dummy text even helps this whole thing just start to pop a little bit more. And I'm just going to do some hatching. And these are the kind of stylistic things that you can do, and as you learn and pick up on, decide whether or not you want to incorporate into your drawing, and that'll help give your drawing personality and kind of your unique style will start to come out. As always, you can find me on Instagram, instagram.com/sketchaday.com. I'm also on facebook.com/sketchaday. But the best way to contact me these days is Instagram. So check out my posts, leave a comment, send me a message, that kind of thing. And thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and follow me on Instagram, turn on notifications, all that good stuff, to see what I've been up to. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time right here on Sketchaday.